So, our first speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is a psychotherapist who has appeared on TV programs such as Big Brother, This Morning, and The Oprah Winfrey Show, guys. I know, right? I think that's when you know you've made it, if you appear on The Oprah Winfrey Show. That must have been amazing. She is currently Cosmopolitan Magazine's resident sex therapist. Yeah, round of applause for that. Talk to her in the interval. And the author of The Single Parent's Handbook. Please welcome to the stage the wonderful Rachel Morris, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I'm really grateful to say that I can't see any of you. All right. My name's Rachel, and I'm an outsider. I come from a long line of outsiders, and tonight I'm going to be talking to you from the inside out. When I was, hang on, I've got a thing. When I was a little girl, my mother said to me that she was a black sheep. She told me, I thought this was because she had black hair, but she said no. A black sheep is an outsider. It's someone who doesn't belong. I remember thinking that her loneliness was palpable even then. I could tell from her expression that being an outsider, being a black sheep, meant that she was different from her brothers and sisters, and that this difference somehow meant that she was worth less than them, that she was worthless. Trapped by this self-limiting belief, my mother made decisions not based on what she could have for herself in her life, but what she felt she deserved. And this made her a prime target, an easy target for men who probably didn't think that they deserved much themselves, although that didn't stop them taking whatever they could from her. I've known my mother for 28 years. I've known my mother for 28 years longer than she knew herself. So I think I can say with some fair accuracy that she deserved better. Unfortunately, she never got to realize that because before she was 40, she was killed in a car accident, along with her mother, my grandmother, who was also a black sheep and a beloved outsider. My grandmother had been snubbed by an entire town, a Cheshire town, when my grandfather brought her back as his second wife. Not only was she working class and Protestant, but she was also a Southerner. And this was reason enough, apparently, for an entire town to turn their backs on her. An experience that she described as so painful, she locked herself indoors with a bottle of wine where she stayed until even that didn't keep the pain away. So she went to the doctors, and she learned how to find the kind of drugs that meant she could lock herself so deep down inside that nobody could reach her. This was a trick she passed on to me. When I was 9 years old, or thereabouts, I remember it was a time when a particularly persistent limiting choice that my mother had made was helping himself to the very last vestiges of my innocence. And nobody seemed to notice except my grandmother as I retreated inside. She invited me to her bedroom one day when we went round to visit her, and she said, "I can see that something's going on for you, and I think I have the answer." I thought she was going to finally give me a chance to say what was happening at home. But what she gave me instead was a DF-118, dihydrocodone or Diconal, or some such really heavy-duty drug. But she was right. I took that pill, and I was fixed. I was flying. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel anything. She gave me a few to go home with, and I clocked where she kept them in her cupboard for future reference. Between them, my mother and her limiting choices and my grandmother's drug addiction, they had ensured inadvertently that I followed in their footsteps, that I became a black sheep, that I was an outsider. And by the time I was 10 years old, I didn't recognize myself, my experiences in the reflection of a single other child. I was definitely a black sheep. I was definitely now an outsider. The reality of life back then for me was so unbelievable, so unthinkable, that I literally sort of projected myself out. It was as if I was starring in my own documentary, like there was a camera in the corner of the room somehow and a director, and they were following my every expression, my every move, the every subtle nuance of my tragedy. I turned my life, this is how I dealt with it, and I turned my life into a film score. I took the cameras with me to school, my first experience of society, the first time that I really learned that there were no exceptions. You either fit in or you fall out. So I spent the next 4 years sitting in a toilet cubicle with a packet of fag butts and some mates, and I sat there waiting, counting the days till I could fall out. My mum watched in horror as I slipped further and further away from the established norm. She thought I would be in danger. I felt a lot safer. Besides, I was fucked if I was going to let myself be diminished by feeling like an outsider in the way that she had and her grandmother had. So I came out loud and proud. I shaved my head. I got a tattoo just to seal the deal. And then when I got pregnant at 18, it's a great picture, isn't it? When I got pregnant at 18, I wasn't going to do it the same as everybody else got pregnant at 18, but she was absolutely relieved, not horrified in the way that I thought she'd be. And I knew it was because this was the first thing I'd done that she could actually identify with. Unfortunately, she never got to meet my grandson, her grandson, because I was 5 months pregnant at the time of that terrible car accident, which was kind of the last straw for me. I moved out of myself. I sort of hid in plain sight. There's a theory about introvert and extrovert. We kind of see it a lot on internet and social media and stuff. But I'd always been told that I was an extrovert because I was loud. But I learned later on through study that actually you can tell an introvert or an extrovert because an introvert walks into a bar full of people and they say, "What do I think of these people? What will these people think of me?" That's the first question that an introvert asks. And you've got two ways of dealing with that introverted question, caring what people think about you. You can either sidle down the side walls really quietly and hope nobody notices you long enough to make an opinion or to form an opinion, or you can get on a table and you can do a dance and you can do a jig and you can try really hard to say, "This is what I want you to think of me. It's all smoke and mirrors. Don't see me as I really am." I came to rely on the gaze of an audience because if I could see a better me reflected in their eyes, a different me, a brave me, then I wouldn't have to know what else was happening. I tried my best. I kept them watching. It was exhausting. Actually, that's a bit soon for that slide. Jumped the gun. It was exhausting. I was on all the time. And then one day, a guy, a rather unscrupulous young man, said, "Did I want to try some skag?" I went, "Yeah, of course I do." I had no idea what skag was, but I wasn't going to turn down a drug of any sort. So I took the tinfoil tube and I sucked in, and then this incredible thing happened. Oh my God. This warmth spread through me, this incredible stillness. It was like I held my breath and I never wanted to breathe out again. And the guy that gave it to me, he said, "You know what that is, don't you?" And I said, "Honestly, no." He said, "It's peace." And I thought, yeah, that's what it is. I'm standing still and I'm feeling peaceful. That's not something I'd ever remembered happening at the same time before. I liked it so much, I did it again and again and again, until finally I couldn't feel anything. It killed the pain, but I didn't feel any joy either. I didn't feel anything. And a life without feeling is no life at all. Rehab. Rehab dragged me, kicking and screaming, back into reality, back into this life. And I was grateful. But they did say that if I was going to survive, not only did I have to get clean and stay clean, but I had to become a productive member of society. I felt like I was back at square one, facing the inside, terrified, but only more terrified of using. So I did what I was told, I took the suggestions, and I did what I could to fit in. I grew my hair. I got a nice new boyfriend. I bought myself some tits. I can leave that one on for a little bit longer if you like. I almost fancy myself. I went on the telly. I went to showbiz parties. I bought clothes from Harvey Nicks. I was in. I had arrived. I was finally on the inside. And I knew I was on the inside because I suffered from the same pressure to conform, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to compete. I lived with the same fear of failure, fear of missing out, fear of judgment, fear of falling behind as all my other fellow insiders. My mother would have been proud. In 2007, up to my eyes in debt, disillusionment, and depression, I packed whatever I could fit into my suitcase and moved into my friend's basement, which at the time was flooded with sewerage, so it tells you how bad things were. It turned out that the inside had been every bit as painful and dangerous and confusing and challenging as the outside had ever been. So I just opted out of all of it. I was neither inside nor outside. I felt like Kermit. Am I halfway up? Am I halfway down? Now, I have access all areas. I'm in when it suits, and when it suits me, and I'm an outsider when that suits me. I'm flexible. I'm both an innie and an outie. I'm an innie-outie flexi. The key, it turned out, was the locus of evaluation, the point at which I valued myself. If I'm acceptable to me, then it doesn't matter as much if I'm acceptable to you or to anybody else. If I can believe I'm lovable, then I won't fight so hard against somebody who tries to love me. If I can understand what motivates me, then I can push myself forward on my own steam and be patient with myself when it's time to pause. If I've got the courage to look inside, then I won't be so obsessed by what's on the outside. When I knew I was coming to do this, I asked my son, who's now 28, I asked him if he'd ever felt like an outsider, thinking that maybe I'd passed it on. And he shrugged his shoulder and he went, well, only of society, as if that was a game he'd never intended to play in the first place, like football. I felt really proud. In that moment, and lots of moments that he brings me, made me feel like I'd come such a long way from there to here. The importance of belonging has never been underestimated in psychology. Evolutionary theory places it right up there as a matter of survival. And I guess if you were a cave person and you kind of got pushed to the outside, you'd be the first to be picked off by a saber-toothed tiger. But even now, it's still essential to us that we belong. It's a major motivating factor in behavior. I see that every day in my therapy practice. It's why the Big Brother program, the franchise, still goes on all of these years later, because young people are still absolutely fascinated by what it is that will make somebody popular, what will keep us accepted, what will keep us safe on the inside, what do we have to do to secure our position in this imaginary heaven called safety on the inside. So yes, we need to belong. But to what and to whom is up to us. I think if we choose our tribe carefully, we choose our family, we choose which community we want to belong to, and then we be the best version of that than we can be. Surely no one can ask any more of us than that. Thank you.